Hello everyone, I see some new faces, which is really cool. Really excited to be here today, especially after a really powerful morning. I think you just spoke about that now, but every time I get to go to a slaughterhouse and bear witness and connect with individuals, I have a range of emotions, anger, frustration, sadness, fear, and it's one thing to have those experiences, but it's what you do next that's so important, and that's why I'm really excited that we actually have this talk after the vigil, because it's like, what's next? How can I take all of those things that I experienced and turn that into positive and effective vegan outreach or communicating with people about veganism? So thank you everyone for being here. Lovely to see some new faces. Just quickly, I know this might not be a Swedish thing, but if you can turn to someone and just give them a hug. Aww. I like to start these things with hugs. Multiple hugs is okay. Hand hugs is okay as well. Love it. So I love seeing some Swedish blushing faces right now. Maybe that's not a thing, but the reason why I love doing that is because it puts a smile on almost everyone's face, and I think in this movement, more smiles, more positivity, the better we are as activists. So that's why I like to start that. So take that with you wherever you go. And then I want to get a quick show of hands. I did this yesterday. How many of you have never done any form of activism before? Woo woo. Give a round of applause for them. Yeah. I love it. I always see, and give a round of applause for everyone else who's an activist. I'm not forgetting you, but I like to call out the new activists here because I think it's so powerful for someone who's never done activism to come to a vegan outreach workshop, which is great. So whatever reason you're here to take in all of this information or just a little bit of it, if you just want to strengthen on a little bit of skills, or everything if you're new to activism, I hope you're able to find some value in today, or tonight. I never know with the lighting out in the Nordic countries. But today, how it's going to go is I'll talk a little bit about myself because there are a few new people. Sorry, you're going to get to hear my little story again if you were here yesterday. But talk a little bit about myself before I just tell you information. And then I'll go into a few things in regards to activism in general, because I always like to focus on that when we have new activists in the room. And it's great when we can get a little refresher for the veteran activists in the room. Then I'll go into talking about beginning of vegan outreach, how to prepare for vegan outreach, get into the bulk, the main part of it. What I love the most is the vegan outreach part, and 5 simple steps, 5 rules, 5 things, 5 pillars, whatever you want to call them, that I focus on doing in every single one of my outreach conversations that really sets me up for success in having someone go from point A to point B, maybe knowing nothing about veganism to everything about veganism, and have really positive and successful conversations. Not everyone, but we get close. Then I'll go into just a few more things that sum up vegan outreach, and then I'll have a Q&A session at the end. So, what's up everyone? Just starting, welcome to the party, Vegan Outreach 2.0. And yeah, then we'll do questions at the end. So if you have anything regarding veganism, activism, how to handle certain objections when doing outreach, we'll save those until the end. And then we'll hang out. Yesterday we got to chat and just have a really good time because it's really nice to bring together vegans and activists within the community. So first, who am I? My name is Joshua Entis, animal liberation activist from Seattle, Washington is where I call my home, but grew up in Los Angeles. I'll be a little bit more quick with this one. Lived the very standard American standard Los Angeles lifestyle, focused on money, status, what car I had, fake friends just to gain status. Like I was just living inconsistent with what was really inside my heart and inside my mind. I was always an animal lover. I was always kind and compassionate, but I sort of lived according to how other people wanted me to live growing up. A lot of social pressure in Los Angeles, California, in the Valley near Hollywood. So I think you would get that. And went to school, went to college, studied communication, started a career in sales. So that's where I get a lot of my outreach techniques from. And it wasn't until 2014 when veganism found me. Super boring story, just Googled with my best friend healthiest diet. Veganism came up and we were like, we're vegan. So that's my vegan story. Just shows how easy it can be. But so for about 2 years, I was plant-based because I was still wearing animal products. I was still supporting industries that exploited animals, zoos, horse races, not because I wanted to support those industries, but because I just was uneducated. Then Earthlings came. Does anyone not know what Earthlings is? Okay, everyone knows Earthlings. Changed my life again, and it really educated me in regards to these industries that I was still supporting. So decided to become an activist, and that was life-changing. That was mind, body, and soul. Boom, full alignment. Found, I did leafleting for my first form of activism. Then I jumped with Direct Action Everywhere and did a disruption. Then I did a protest out in front of a circus. Then I found Anonymous for the Voiceless and found that that was what I was passionate about, speaking with people. So vegan outreach was where I just found a home. Started the AV chapter in Seattle and did 15 to 20 demos before I realized that I didn't like my job anymore. Well, not that I didn't like my job, but I wasn't passionate about my job as much as I was activism and helping people create change. Because it's one thing to be vegan. It's amazing to be vegan. But the second that you choose to actively help other people come to that same conclusion as you did, it's life-changing. So I had this crazy idea of quitting my job and traveling the world. I had this vision of 25 countries, 200 and something actions, all for the animals, all for activists. And I ended up quitting my job in end of July and left for Toronto, Canada as my first stop on what I called the Compassion Tour. And to date, this is country 16 or 17. I don't know. I also said I was in Gothenburg, Norway today in my live stream, so my head is all over the place. But yeah, so country 17, I've done over 100 cubes of truth, so I have a lot of outreach practice. I've done over 40 slaughterhouse vigils, 60 plus of these talks. I've done a lot of activism, and I've had the opportunity of meeting thousands of activists from around the world to hear their stories, their successes, their struggles about vegan outreach. So I've really put together this talk based off what I've learned and what people have given me feedback with their own life and their own activism journey. So that's a little bit, I think, yeah, that's it about me. That brings me here today, Gothenburg, Sweden, or Gothenburg? How do you say it again? Göteborg, yes. I'm probably saying that incorrect, but we're getting close. Yes, so that's a little bit about me. One more question here. Does anyone not know what a cube of truth is? Great. Maybe? Okay, so cube of truth, if you've seen anything online, people holding computer screens, wearing white masks, got it. Effective street outreach, I gain a lot of my skills and my practices from that, but anything that I talk about today, you'll get this in a moment, can be taken throughout the rest of your life in any conversation that you have. A lot of what I talk about focuses on us having a screen in front of us showing footage, but I'll talk about that a little bit later, how you can combat that if you don't have a screen. So that's about me. I want to get into the vegan activism side really quick, just touch upon this for a few minutes. Like I said, it's one thing to be vegan, but the second you stand up and start to be a voice for the animals in regards to helping other people make that connection too, it just takes your life to the next level, I feel. It gave me a new sense of purpose. After a slaughterhouse vigil today, I went on a little rant on Facebook and I realized that vegans are going to pop up left and right with or without us. They're going to wake up and they're going to Google healthiest diet. Something on the news is going to come up, live export on 60 Minutes. People are going to choose to go vegan on their own, which is great. But we need to get people to be active. And I think that's so important, is to be active and to get out there and actively engage in helping people become vegan and active. But the thing is, before I got into activism, I thought that there was only one form of activism. Going out on the streets, talking with people, filming it and putting it on YouTube. I literally thought that was like the only form. Or just throwing fake blood on the ground and doing a PETA demonstration. That's what I thought. But my mind was blown when I realized that there are so many ways that we can do activism. I started as an Instagram food blog, making smoothie bowls and pictures of avocados and like, veganism's so good. Like, I was finding my voice though, I was finding my narrative. And then that transitioned into me having a full-time activist career, I guess I would say, a journey, a process. And social media, if you like to write, start a blog. If you like music, write a song. There's so many ways that we can be active. So I think empowering ourselves to not just be singularly focused on activism. We can look at this broad spectrum of the world, and that every single one of us has a unique set of skills and traits that we can use to add value to this movement, to add value to people, to help them create change. So that was my little thing on activism and just how important it is. And for the new activist in the room, you just have some awesomeness ahead of you, because when you may have had it already, but when you get someone that tells you, thank you for helping me choose a more compassionate lifestyle, thank you for helping me become vegan, thank you for helping me become an activist, that's powerful. That's the fuel that I have inside of myself, knowing that I'm doing some serious work for the animals, when I can look back and say, we're doing some powerful work, and I'm going to continue doing that in many different facets. So I talked more about aligning your activism with your passion yesterday, but today is going to be just on the vegan outreach side. So getting into prepping, how to start vegan outreach. We have this idea of like, what is vegan outreach? So what I defined vegan outreach is any conversation that you're having with someone where you're taking them from maybe knowing nothing about veganism to knowing everything. If you're sitting in a Uber with you have Uber here? Yeah. When you're sitting in a car with your Uber driver on the bus and someone notices your water bottle and asks you questions because there's stickers on it, your fork bracelet, your t-shirt, this is vegan outreach. If you want to have it with your dog and vegan outreach, that could still be vegan outreach as well, but it's a little bit different. So any conversation you're having with another human being, taking them from point A, maybe knowing nothing about veganism, to point B, knowing everything. And when we have communication with people, we only have a very small amount of time with that person. If it's a bystander on the street, family members, friends are a little bit different. We have longer time with them, but talking about at a Cube of Truth or doing a demonstration or a manifestation, we have a small amount of time. So it's my job, it's our job to give them everything that you believe they think they need, so that when they leave that conversation, they have all the information necessary to come to their own conclusion on whether or not they want to support these industries. We can only do so much. I'll say this over and over. I can't be the vegan police. As much as I want a shirt saying vegan police and I want to be following people home and checking their internet search records to make sure they're vegan, but we can only do so much in our conversations. So give yourself a little bit more credit when you're having those conversations, because I know a lot of us, myself included, got a little bit down in the beginning when I felt like I wasn't answering my questions properly or their questions properly or their objections. And I felt like I wasn't doing justice for the animals. So you are doing something as long as you have that end goal in mind and you're giving them everything that you feel you have. And that's why today is so important, because what I'm going to talk about today is just a really nice little package of information that you can take out into doing vegan outreach like tonight if you wanted to. And it's really easy. So getting started into vegan outreach, now that we know what it is and how it can not just be at a Cube of Truth, it can be anywhere in your home, at work, on a bus, plane, train. Getting ready for vegan outreach. Two things that I focused on. One, headspace, which is what I talked about yesterday. In the beginning of my activism, I approached almost every single outreach conversation with a really negative mindset. I was that angry militant vegan, and I really wanted to just strangle everyone and be like, wake up, go vegan, and I couldn't do that on outreach. It wasn't effective. I didn't actually strangle people, but strangling came out in my tonality. I was pretty aggressive and pretty militant. What I realized is my mindset wasn't there. I was approaching every single conversation like, all right, I see someone watching this footage. What objection are they going to give me today? You know, is it going to be that lions eat other animals? Is it going to be that you can't get enough protein? Is it going to be, oh, you're going to be B12 deficient? So I was filling my mind with these negative thoughts, and then which made me a little bit more agitated, which made me a little bit more aggressive. So my conversations showed that. I was a little bit more on edge, aggravated and aggressive. They were yelling a little bit more. I was yelling, not efficient or effective for vegan outreach. Every conversation that I have and that I want to inspire everyone to have, think about, if it's me and you, we have this little imaginary bubble, right? That's our space. I want this space to be filled with as much trust, respect, positivity, love, compassion, and understanding as possible. All of that in this space between me and you. Because the more of that that's in this space, as you'll see when I get to my 5 steps, the easier it's going to be to help someone come to the conclusion that veganism is something for them. So I want to focus on that space. Headspace, your mindset, is so important when it comes to approaching your conversations. Flip the switch and say, this person is going to be open to veganism today. They're going to listen to what I have to say. They're going to provide some really good feedback. They're going to ask some great questions. We're going to have an amazing conversation. And they're going to leave taking veganism a little bit more seriously than when they started. And I just flipped that switch in my head and started thinking a little bit more positively. And I saw my outreach conversations get a lot more successful in regards to just being more positive. Not every conversation ends with a hug or a handshake saying, I'm vegan now. Some do, but you get the point. It just set me up for success. Think potential. Don't think, oh, we're some small number of the world that's vegan, only 1%, 99% majority is not vegan. Think 99% potential. I say this over and over. This change of mindset is going to take your outreach to the next level. And then the second thing, coming off a sales background, what I had to do in my sales conversation or my sales career was for the first 2 months, I had to write a sales script. I don't know if anyone has done sales here before, but I was a phone salesman, and my manager literally made me write down this script. Hello, my name is Joshua Entis. How are you doing today? Wait for answer. Like, may I please speak with your buyer? Like, I literally had to write this script down so that when I picked up the phone for the first 2 months or after those 2 months, I was reading this script. And then it sounded really weird, and someone probably thought I was reading off of a script in the beginning because I sounded like a robot. So if you're ever on a call with someone and they sound like a robot, they're probably reading a script. But after 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, My script went in the trash, and it was here, and I had this like skeleton layout in my head of what I needed to say. But I wasn't actually saying it the exact way I wrote it. Everything's different because a conversation with you, between me and you, is different than me and you, which is different than me and you, which is different than me and you. But I had something to fall back on in my head. I had this script that I had written and practiced over and over. So what I did is I took that into my vegan outreach, and I talked with a lot of my other outreachers when I had the Seattle chapter, and I was like, great idea. This might sound weird, but let's write a script. Picture your favorite or your best outreach conversation, the one where they're like, hey, how's it going? Have you seen this footage before? Oh, it's awful. It's awful. What do I do? Go vegan? Okay. Think of your best outreach conversation, not that perfect, but you get what I'm saying. Think of this conversation and write it down. How do you open the conversation? How do you want to start the conversation when someone's watching footage at a Cube of Truth? How do you want to start this conversation when a person on a bus asks you about your t-shirt? Write this script down. Maybe put in some objections that they would give or some questions that they might ask back. If they say this, I'm going to say this. If they say this, I'm going to say this. And write it down. And then think about the worst conversation, the every objection, the religion, the lions, the protein, the amino acid profile of tofu. Like, write down this entire script of what you think might be the worst conversation. Write down what you would say. If they gave this objection, how would you answer this? Because what you're going to do here, and you don't have to do this, isn't mandatory. I'm just saying it really worked for me in my sales career and my outreach. But what this did is it allowed me to run through this cycle. It started giving me outreach practice without overcoming the fear of actually doing outreach. I got to do it at home. I was like in front of my mirror looking all weird, like, oh, like, have you seen this video before? No, I haven't. You know, like, I didn't do that too much, but in my head, that was the voice going on, and I was able to really have these conversations so that when I did have my first outreach conversation, even though, which I'll get to in a moment, wasn't super successful, I still had something to fall back on in my mind so that when someone gave me this objection, I didn't feel pushed up against a wall, or even though you do, I was able to combat with at least something to get me out of that because I had an exit strategy written down. And having that exit strategy helped me get out of that conversation. If you don't want to write this full script, what I recommend you doing is writing down the top 20 most common objections people give to veganism and answering them in your own words. What this is going to do, it's going to be a script as well. It's literally, that's what the conversation, we all know how to say hi to people. We all know how to say, have you seen this footage before? How does this make you feel? But what a lot of us don't know how to do in the beginning is respond to certain objections. Not because we're ignorant people and we're bad at doing vegan outreach, because we're beginners. We haven't done it. In the beginning of my outreach, I thought I knew it all, but I didn't. I didn't like know anything, but I lied to try to make it look like I did it all, which ended up getting me nowhere. So I just had to go educate myself. So write down the most common objections that you have and answer them with your own words. I talk a lot about Earthling Ed's 30 Days, 30 Excuses, his free ebook. It's a massive resource. If you haven't seen that already, it's online on his website, or it's in a video version on YouTube. But Earthling Ed has his own style of speaking, and it's amazing and very philosophical, and I think everyone wants to be Ed with their vegan outreach. What I recommend doing is reading his answers and summarizing them in your own words so that you're not going out and doing outreach and trying to be Earthling Ed. You're going out there and trying to be you and you and you. But we can take from all of his information, powerful information. But I think one thing that holds a lot of people back from success in their vegan outreach is trying to be someone else. Be you. You have your own voice, you have your own voice, and you have your own voice. You might have an outreach conversation with someone that I might not be able to get into, where your style might be able to get into them. And they might be able to make that connection. So be you, write this script down, focus on your headspace, or just summarize and write down your answers to the most common objections. So that's getting into vegan outreach. Here's my water break. See, it's awkward. Sorry, camera. I need one of those like Camelbacks with a little straw. So I can just, yeah, so that's sort of prepping, getting into vegan outreach. We know what vegan outreach is. We know how to set our mindset right. We know how to start educating ourselves, preparing for a test, right? We study to prepare, well, I didn't study, but a lot of us study for tests. Study for vegan outreach. Look at it like that. And then also getting into the, so yeah, we have headspace. We have focusing on practicing your script. And then we have what is effective vegan outreach. And like I said, I'll get back to this space. I want this little bubble to be amazing. A lot of trust, a lot of respect, because the more trust and respect that's in there, the more information we're going to gather from that human being. In sales, it's really hard to sell you something if I know nothing about you. And if I don't ask good questions and I just go in there trying to sell my product. My first outreach conversation was like, hey, have you seen this footage before? Oh, no, I haven't. Well, let me tell you, this is the dairy industry, this is the egg industry, this is the. I didn't give them a chance to say anything. I just lectured them. And then I was like, here's a card. Do you have any questions? They were like, no. And then I left. It was like 2 minutes. That's not the most effective way that we can do vegan outreach. And so what I did is over time I created these 5 simple steps, these 5 rules, whatever you want to call them, that I use in every single outreach conversation to help me go from here to here with my outreach. I'll have I'm working on a free ebook. It's like 10 pages that sums up this entire talk. So I'll make sure to get it to the organizers here. That'll be done in like another week or 2. So if you wanted to have like a nice little consolidated thing that'll go over these 5 points more specifically, I'm going to say what they are rapid fire, but then I'm going to go into each one. The first one is ask, listen, understand, educate, and inspire. So we have ask, listen, understand, educate, and inspire. I use these things, pillars, rules, principles, whatever you want to call them, in every conversation. The first one, ask. It's so simple. Ask questions. But if you were like me, and a lot of outreachers that I see, we forget to ask questions. And what I mean by this is ask well thought out, open-ended questions. No one likes to be told things. We get this sort of stereotype that we're entitled and we're preachy. Well, yeah, if you go up to them and do what I did and just lecture them, we might look like we're entitled and preachy and not giving anyone space. You don't sell someone a product, we're just giving them information. You need to ask questions. And I don't like looking at vegan activism in regards to sales, but essentially it is. We're just selling a different product. We're selling a lifestyle without any pay or vacation or healthcare. We're doing it because we want to end this injustice. But we are selling something. We want someone who might not know anything about veganism to know everything and to say, hey, this is what I want to choose to live by. This is what I want to buy. So that's why I look at it in the sales aspect. So the ask, it might sound so simple, but a lot of us forget it. Ask questions. Instead of saying something like, this is the dairy industry, this is what happens in the dairy industry, are you familiar with what happens in the dairy industry? Same thing, but now you're not talking, you're going to get them to talk. We want people to come to their own conclusion when it comes to making this decision on whether or not they want to support these industries and go vegan. I could sit there and be like, hey, go vegan today, and someone might feel pressure and be like, okay, I'll go vegan, give me a card, and then just leave. But if you give them information and you ask questions and they're able to come to their own conclusion on something and be like, you know what, I'm against animal cruelty, what I'm seeing here is awful, I actually feel healthier when I'm not eating animals, veganism could be for me. That's them coming to their own conclusion, but the easiest way to get there is by you asking questions. So, are you familiar with what happens in this industry? What are your thoughts on this footage? How does watching this make you feel? What does animal cruelty look like to you? Have you seen this footage before? Where have you seen this footage before? Oh, on Facebook? Did you swipe through it, or were you able to watch it? Why weren't you able to watch it? Ask all these amazing probing questions, because my goal in outreach is to get to know everything about that human being. I want to know their life story if they will tell it to me in this short amount of time, because my goal is to uncover as much information as possible. That should be all of our goals, because the more information we uncover from someone, we're going to find these points of need, of desire that that person's going to need or desire about veganism, and then we're going to be able to use that information with them later on in the conversation. People are going to be telling you some really powerful information. For example, you could ask the question, how does this footage make you feel? And someone might say, this makes me feel sick. That's powerful information. You know that they're disgusted and it's really affecting them on the inside. Now you know how to approach your next question. Now you know how to take the conversation this way. You know they're already having an emotional response to that. But you're never going to get that if you're not asking the right questions. And what I mean by well-planned is I think we should all have some questions that we have planned that we ask in every outreach conversation. For example, do you eat animals? Even are you vegan, or do you eat animal products? Is something that I ask in every conversation, because in the beginning I had this beautiful conversation with this girl. I thought I was crushing it. I was asking amazing questions. Are you familiar with what happens in this industry? She was like, yeah, A, B, and she was telling me all this stuff. We had great communication. I was giving, she was giving, I was taking, she was taking. 15 minutes in, she goes, but yeah, I'm vegan. And I was like, all right, Joshua, like you could have spent 3 minutes with her, getting her to be active, and the rest of the time with other people who were staring at the footage that may have not been vegan. That's why I think we should be practicing these things, writing these scripts, so we have specific questions that we ask every single time at certain points in the conversation to avoid that. And the reason why I said we want to uncover information, because the next one is listen, which I'll get to in a moment. But if you ask specific questions, you're going to be able to really take stuff that they might know or not know about industries or veganism. So for example, what I did is I asked a lady what her thoughts are, or if she's familiar with what happens in the dairy industry. She told me that she knows cows are artificially inseminated. She told me that cows are hooked up to machines and have their milk stolen from them. She used all this verbiage. She knew it was wrong, but she didn't say anything about what happens to the bobby calves. So she didn't tell me this information, but because I asked the right question, I uncovered a really powerful bit of information that she didn't tell me. So I kept that in my mind. I held on to that. Then, when I asked a question about, so what's your current lifestyle like right now? What challenges are you having with veganism? She then went into telling me about her daughter. And then she gave me her whole daughter's life story. And she had so much love for her daughter and told me that she cares about her daughter's health and her daughter's well-being, and she wants her daughter to succeed in this world. She wants a healthy planet for her daughter. And I was just sitting there, like listening to her. And she gave me this really powerful information that I uncovered, because I asked her the right question, is that she cares about her daughter. So at the end of the conversation, when I asked the question, so after all this stuff, do you think you're going to be able to be vegan? Or do you think that's something that you're going to look into? She goes, I can't because I just love cheese. And I said, hey, I totally understand where you're coming from. Cheese was really hard for me, but you didn't mention something really important about the dairy industry that I think might have an impact on you. It's what happens to the babies. And I asked her, do you know what happens to the babies? And she started to get like really sad, because we just had a powerful conversation about her daughter, about her child. And then when she said, no, I didn't, tell me more, and I told her about that, she goes, I can't do cheese. And that only happened because I asked the right questions and I truly listened to what she had to say. So that brings me into number 2, is listen. Actively listen. It's one thing to ask the right questions, but if you're just sitting there like, planning your next combative, how am I going to attack this, how am I going to attack this, you're not going to be actively listening. And subconsciously, people know. People know when you're not actively listening. We understand when we're talking with a friend and they're just not having it. They're on their phone, they're not listening to us, we don't feel respected, trusted, understood. This safe little bubble is now not being so safe and respectful and trusting. So actively listen to people. Repeat back what they said to, what they're saying to you, so that they know that you're listening to them. You know, oh, it's amazing that you know this and this about the dairy industry. Not many people do. Repeat it back to them. So it's just something else going into their mind, and they know you're listening to them. Because it's one thing to ask questions, but if you're not listening, all that powerful information is just going to go whoosh, over your head. And how are you going to use that stuff later? If I wasn't listening to this lady, I would have never been able to make that connection on bobby calves and her child. And I would never have been able to use it at the right time for her in this conversation. So it's one thing to listen to what people are verbally saying, but something that really took my activism or my outreach to the next level is when I focused on the nonverbals. In communication, what I majored in college, depending on what books you read, they say anywhere from 60 to 90% of all communication is nonverbal. Body posture, hand movement, eye contact, tonality, all of that stuff speaks volumes, but we don't understand that. So the switch flipped in my head when I was having a conversation with a lady, and she was having 2 shopping bags, and she had her leg out of the conversation. So I started to pick up on that. Old me would have just continued to lecture and give her all this information and ask questions and not let her go. New me, light bulb went on in my head. I was like, this lady is telling me something with her nonverbals. She's carrying bags. Her face is looking at her watch. She's got a foot outside of the conversation, and she really looks like she's not having it. So what I did is I stopped my conversation. I said, hey, it looks like you have to go. I know you're probably pressed on time. Do you just have 2 more minutes? I want to talk to you about what's on this screen. And she was like, hey, I really appreciate that. I actually do have a meeting to get to, but I have a few more minutes. She put her bag down. She brought her foot back into the conversation, and she gave me full attention. This was really powerful. We ended up having 20 more minutes of conversation, and then she took an AV card and said she would try Challenge 22. Not saying this is going to happen to everyone if you notice people with bags in their hands, but this just gets to the point that body posture, tonality, how someone's speaking, their hand positioning, their eye contact, if they're continually looking away, looking at their watch, looking at their phone is a very powerful nonverbal that I used to just dismiss and continue to try to ask another question. So listen to what someone's saying and uncover that information and store stored in your head, but also listen to what their body is telling you. That's going to speak volumes because it's only going to help. And another thing that I learned in business and sales is called mirroring or matching. It's sort of mirroring someone else's body posture, tonality. In Australia, when everyone was like super chill, like, yeah, like I'm against this stuff, this is animal cruelty, I was just like, yeah, hey, have you seen this footage before? Like, I slouched a little bit more. I was using like dude and bro, like with these conversations, because what that does subconsciously is it makes someone feel a little bit more connected with, a little bit more understood, and like you're actually listening to their nonverbals, to their tonality, to what their body posture is saying. If someone's standing really aggressively and it looks like they're scared and frightened by you, maybe calm your tone down, what you're saying, maybe adjust something that you're doing to maybe mirror or match what they're doing. And this has really helped me because now I'm like laser focused when I'm in outreach. I'm listening to what they're saying and I'm listening to everything that their body is saying. Now this doesn't happen overnight. This was a skill that took 2 years of majoring it in college to really taking nonverbal communication classes where I learned stuff. You know, we had to give like presentations with our nonverbals. It was really weird, but like we had to communicate with people that way and uncover things. So try that. Just be a little bit more mindful when someone's looking at their watch or their phone or has bags in their hand, because I truly value their time. They took time out of their day to stop, to watch slaughterhouse footage, or if it's on a bus, a train, a plane, to talk to me. And so I want to give them that respect. And I want to value their time. And the more someone feels valued and respected for their time, the more information they're going to give you. I'll say this over and over. I want someone to tell me their life story, if they can, without going on for like an hour, because I have other conversations to get to. But if in a 15-minute conversation they want to tell me about their job and what their company serves for food and their kids and their dog and their road trip to Virginia, like if they want to tell me about that stuff, I'm going to listen, because I'm going to try to find something that they're telling me to use with them later on in the conversation. So you have ask well-planned, open-ended questions. Get them to speak. Get them to talk. Listen to those answers, what they're giving you. And listen to what they're not giving you verbally, like that lady with the dairy industry, where she didn't tell me about that. That was a powerful piece of information she didn't verbalize, but I listened to everything else, so I still took that information. And then listened to their nonverbals. Really powerful. The third one is understand. Water break before we get into understanding?
We can understand that.
Thank you for understanding. I feel respected now. I don't feel as judged. So, yeah, ask, listen, understand. I think this is my favorite. Now, the last one's my favorite. I'm getting off topic here. Third one is understand. This is the empathy. This is where we get to try, as hard as it is, what we should, understand where the other person's coming from. By a show of hands, how many people went vegan overnight? Usually it's 40 to 50%. For those of you that didn't raise your hand, I'm calling you out. You had your own journey to veganism and you ate animals before. Those of you who raised your hand, you had your own journey to veganism and you ate animals before. This backfired in Estonia 2 weeks ago when someone was like, no, I've actually been vegan my whole life. I was like, he's 42. I was like, all right, so all of this applies to everyone but you, my friend. Like, it was a shock because usually I can make that calling out joke, but it didn't work for him, and he was very Estonian, very stern face, so it was not the best positive feedback. But yeah, so basically what I got out of that is we all had our own journey. We were all in their shoes. If we're having a conversation with someone who currently eats animals, even though it's hard for us to understand and we want to do the whole strangle thing, we used to do that. I used to hunt. I used to eat the standard American diet and used to eat a lot of animals every single day. 3 eggs every morning. Like, that was me. So it's really hard. In the beginning, I was judging everyone. But what I realized is, how can I judge someone if I used to do that? And yes, we can judge. I'm not saying you can't. But in regards to this safe space, this safe bubble, and getting ourselves to having the most successful outreach conversation, non-judgment is best. Non-judgment and understanding really provides a lot of value. Now, there's a lot of other forms of activism out there, don't get me wrong, that does not take an understanding and takes a judgmental approach. And I think there's a place and time for all different forms of activism. But for vegan outreach, non-judgment and understanding works best. This is when we get to put ourselves, or try to put ourselves, in their shoes in that moment. When we're having a conversation with someone and they feel judged, it's you against me. They feel attacked. That's when the wall goes up. That's when the cognitive dissonance comes in full force. That's a tough situation to be in. That's when they start giving you every objection. That's when their fear mechanism kicks in and they start giving you, but lines though, bacon though, like, but we've done it for centuries, you know, but this, but that. That's when we start seeing this stuff come up. So what I do, a simple thing of saying, hey, I understand where you're coming from, those words right there changes the entire conversation. So there is that awkward moment in every one of my conversations when I say, hey, do you eat animals? And before they have a chance to answer, because they look at me like, okay, I'm feeling judged now, here's this vegan, I say, hey, don't worry, I totally understand where you're coming from, I used to eat animals as well. Or hey, don't worry, I'm not coming from a place of judgment. Both of those same things mean the same thing to them. It's, hey, this person was in my position, now you're on the same playing field. You never want to speak to someone from up here to down here. No one likes to be spoken to. People like to be spoken with, not to. I'll say it again, people like to be spoken with, not to. And I think that's so important when it comes to our vegan outreach, is how we handle those questions when we ask those sort of leading, judging questions. Hey, do you eat animals? Like, we obviously know they probably do, and they're going to feel judged. Hey, don't worry, I understand where you're coming from. Don't worry, I totally understand. I remember how hard it was. These same sentences mean the same thing. It means I understand where you're coming from. And the more people feel understood, the more information they're going to give you. You see the trend. All of these little tips that you can do is just going to bring down that wall more. And you'll see it. You'll see it in their eyes. You'll see it in their body posture. The second you become more kind, compassionate, and understanding, the easier of a time they're going to have communicating with you. And I see it all the time. I look at their eyes, and I see them getting more sincere, and I see them trusting me more, and we're building that rapport. And I think that's so important when it comes to talking with someone about a subject that, to them, the idea of changing an entire lifestyle is very scary for a lot of people. It was for me. I used to be the one that made fun of vegans, called them organic, granola, hippies, militant, made fun of people with reusable water bottles that's not over there anymore. And I was afraid. So I think we need to be mindful of that we were all in that position. Maybe it wasn't hard for you to go vegan. It wasn't hard for me to go vegan once I got past my own ego. But we still need to be mindful of that. So understanding where people come from is a key factor in regards to having the best outreach conversations that you can have. And now, has anyone heard of the technique feel, felt, found?
Yes. From you.
Okay. Okay. So yeah. Don't listen to her. Just listen to me right now. Yeah, you're a fan. Okay. I'm going to Google it later if you want. Feel, felt, found. This is a technique that I now use. I just learned about it recently, a couple months ago in Sydney. A technique that I use now in every conversation that really helps me when you're in the situation where someone gives you an objection and you want to combat that without coming from a place of judgment. So I'm going to say it. I'm going to use it as an example first, and then I'll explain what it means. It's easier that way. So if someone gives you the objection, I can't go vegan because I can't get all of my nutrients. Instead of saying, okay, you're an idiot, you can get all those, like how I used to be, just instantly firing back. Instead of doing that, there is a way to get them to calm down and to understand that there is a solution, and to do it in a non-judgmental way, and that's feel, felt, found. So when someone says, hey, I can't go vegan because you can't get enough nutrients. I totally understand how you feel. Many people felt that way before, but what I found was you can get all of your essential nutrients, micro, macro, from eating a broad spectrum of plants. Totally understand how you feel about that. Hey, I used to think that as well. Many people felt that way. They tell me all the time that they can't get their nutrients, they can't get their protein, but what they found was, then you give them the solution. So I'll break this down. Feel. I understand how you feel. This is the empathy. This is the rapport. This is the connecting with that human being and bringing them to that same level. Now, the felt is moving them to a more objective group. Remember what I said about when it's me versus you? It's I'm the vegan, you're the non-vegan. I know you're vegan, but in this case, you're the non-vegan, and now you feel attacked. Because I'm the vegan talking about vegan stuff, and you're the non-vegan, you're in the wrong. That's what they think. So when you move someone to other people felt, or many other people felt, you now bring them to a bigger group, this objective group. It's now not me versus you. It's me versus you and a massive group of people. So that wall gets brought down a little. They feel a little bit more understood. They give you a little bit more information. They don't feel as attacked. Then you provide them with the solution. But you don't provide them with the solution from you. You provide them with the solution from the group. But what they found was, and you give them the information. Now you took someone from here with this objection to maybe understanding that a little better without you coming across as judgy, preachy, entitled, and just saying that I'm right, you're wrong. It's, hey, I understand how you feel. I was in that same position. All these you're not alone, my friend, but what they found was. So I love feel, felt, found. Every demo I go to now after this workshop, I'm like walking around and I hear someone go, I totally understand how you feel. And I'm like, wait for it. And then I hear felt. I'm like, wait for it. And then they use found. And it's great because you can see people, like the bystanders really nodding their head because subconsciously, they don't feel attacked. They don't feel it's you and me. That's the best way to put it. Now they're part of this group. They're like, ooh, I'm not alone. I have an army of people behind me that don't think you can get all your nutrients, which there is. So use it, Google it, look into it. It's big in the business and sales world, but feel, felt, found. That's in my little free ebook as well, so that goes a little bit more in detail. So that's like the 0.5 of the number 3 of understand. So it's really, there's 5.5 process things that I do, but feel, felt, found, it's amazing. Try it out. Works really, really well when you come from getting an objection and how to scale that down and give someone a solution without coming across as the know-it-all. Number 4, so you have recap. Ask good questions, well-planned questions. Listen to those answers. Listen to what they're telling you, what they're not telling you, and what their nonverbals are telling you. Understand where they're coming from. Put yourself on that same playing field. Feel, felt, found. And then number 4 is educate. So we've asked these great questions. We've listened to this information. We're storing all this powerful information in here. But now, what do we do with that? Now it's time to educate. Now it's time to take those hours of watching What the Health, Cowspiracy, reading How Not to Die 5 times, watching Earthling Ed videos 1,000 times. Like, we get to take all of this information that's in our heads as animal rights activists and educate them. But in the beginning, I'll go back to my example, when I was lecturing people, that's not the best way to educate. Another switch flipped in my head. I said, hey, everyone has their own need. Everyone has this unique need from this conversation. It might be health for you, environment for you, religion for you, ethics for you, a little subcategory of health for you, a little subcategory of environment for you. Everyone's got their own needs in this conversation, their own agenda. So what I found is that we need to educate people specifically tailored to their needs. So I call it filling in the gaps. Don't just get up there and lecture. Find the right time in the conversation to give them the right information that you think they need. Just like this lady with the dairy industry. When she didn't tell me about the bobby calf, I could have just initially said, oh, yep, and you forgot about what happens to the baby cows. Probably wouldn't have been as powerful as holding on to it in my mind, waiting for it, asking a leading question to get her to tell me about her life. When she told me she has a child, boom, gave her the information so that she can more effectively make that connection. This is what I mean by educating smart. Educating by filling in the gaps. This happens throughout the conversation. It might happen with your opening question. Someone might be like, what's going on here? Well, then you can explain what's happening on the screen. I don't think you have to wait and hold back all your information to give it to them, but just try to be really mindful of what information would be really powerful to use later on in the conversation. I'm going to take a Gary Vee reference, one of my favorite influencers online. I've never used this before, but in like boxing, you have jab, jab, and then a right hook kind of knocks them out. That's how I look at it. It's like you're jabbing with all this little bit of information and questions, and then you hit them with the right hook, with the bit of information that you think they're going to need that's going to be most impactful for them at the right time. That's maximizing your effectiveness in your vegan outreach. You're giving them all the information that they need at the specific time. And this is only going to happen if we're educating ourselves. For someone that's new to activism, you might be professionals at health, environment, and religion, I don't know, but in the beginning of my activism, I didn't know everything. So I think it's one thing to educate everyone that we're speaking with, but it's another thing to educate ourselves. So if there's something that you don't know, I think we're all professionals, like I said yesterday, at the ethical side of animal agriculture. No one could argue me on that. I'm a professional. Health, environment, religion, I know a lot because I've done this a lot, but I wouldn't call myself a professional. There's still things that I'm constantly learning, new tactics I can use to combat this objection and that objection. So I'm constantly educating myself. I know a lot of full-time activists who have people that research stuff for them, and then we'll have a call with them once a month to give them new stats, to give them new things that's going on in the movement because they're really busy with their activism that they don't have the time to read massive books and this and that. So they're constantly working on themselves too. So I think that's really important. Educate people and educate ourselves. Find the right time to give people this education, this information. If you are not at a Cube of Truth and you don't have a screen, then paint the picture for a family member. Mom, how does it feel? Or how do you feel about the fact that we're killing 56 billion land animals every year. What are your thoughts of this industry? And paint the picture for them. You don't have to have a computer screen in front of you. You can whip out your phone if you need to. You can use tools online, but do whatever you can to educate them. We only have, like I said in the beginning, a very short amount of time. Sometimes it's a 5-minute Uber drive. Sometimes it's a 2-hour plane ride that I don't want to be having outreach the whole time, but it happened. And sometimes it's 15 minutes at a Cube of Truth, or out on the streets, or to a police officer at a slaughterhouse. We have to maximize our time. That's why it's so important to ask the right questions and to listen to that stuff and really figure out what part of information we want to use. Because instead of just sitting there and lecturing and giving all this information, be smart about the information that you give, because we only have that small amount of time. My goal, obviously, I would love everyone to leave my conversation saying, high five, I'm going vegan. But I know that my job is to give them all the information they need to educate, to inspire them, so that when they leave my conversation, when they leave our conversation, they got all the tools they need. Now it's up to them. We can only do so much, so I'm going to work on maximizing my time with them. So you have ask, listen, understand, educate, and my favorite one, number 5, is inspire. This is the call to action. In sales, this is the closing. This is the selling of the product. You'd be surprised at how many people that I've met throughout this trip that don't give a call to action. And I mean a specific call to action. And I think, has anyone seen Chasing Coral on Netflix? Very powerful documentary, talks about how the coral in the ocean is dying. And I was very into it. One, I was waiting for them to mention veganism as a solution, but they never did. But that's my own agenda. Put that aside. But I was wanting to find out more. I was like, how can I do more for the ocean? What can I do to take my activism from animal rights to also do like oceanic rights? Like, how can I fight for the ocean? I was like pumped up. And at the end of the movie, it was like, visit our website. So I was left with all this powerful information, but no call to action. There was no what's next. There was no Joshua, do this. And I see this a lot when I'm traveling around the world doing activism. A lot of people are having really good conversations, but then they're just like, hey, I really appreciate the time. Did you have any questions? Yeah, hope you look into this. Have a great day. And then they'll leave. Conversation went really well, and I'm not saying it's a bad conversation, but where's the motivation? Where's the what's next? Where's the call to action? So what I talk about in the inspiration is making sure that regardless of what conversation it is and how long we have it, we need to give people a call to action. Even I had this Uber drive where it was like 6 minutes long, and I didn't want to have a conversation, but my friends always put me in the front seat because they know I'm probably going to talk to them about veganism. And I had an anonymous for the voiceless shirt. We were going to a Cube, and the guy goes, oh, what's all the shirts you're wearing? I was like, oh, here we go. So I had a conversation with him, but it was like only 4 minutes. And I was like, all right. I got one thing out of him, that he was big on the environment. And as we were getting out, I was like, all right, thank you so much. 5 stars all the way. And I was like, where's my call to action? Even though it was such a simple conversation, I had a business card in my pocket that had must watch. Cowspiracy was on there. I was like, all right, my friend, I know you gotta go. Will you watch this? Cowspiracy. And I was looking in the window, and he took the card. He's like, is it on Netflix? I was like, yes. He goes, I'll watch it. Thank you. Something as simple as that is still a call to action, because you can only do so much in that conversation, and it's what they do next that is most important. So I gave him that call to action. But something that really, another light bulb, another switch that flipped in my head. I had a lot of these aha moments throughout my advocacy or my outreach. And it was that there isn't a one-size-fits-all for a call to action. The beginning of my activism, I thought it was, here's a business card that has Challenge 22. For anyone that doesn't know, it's a free online 22-day vegan challenge. I thought that was how I was supposed to end every single conversation. Here's a card. Try Challenge 22. Does that seem like something for you? Thumbs up. Have a great day. What I realized quickly is that that's not the most efficient or effective for everyone. You have different needs. You have different needs. You have different needs. So because we're asking questions and we're uncovering all this information, I'm going to know those needs at the end if you're listening, if you're truly listening. So what I did was I started to tailor my closing, I'm thinking sales now, I started to tailor my call to action to be specific for their needs. I looked at it like this. This analogy might seem really weird in the beginning, but I'll explain at the end. You have this gift wrapping table at the mall. It's Christmas time, and you have this empty gift wrap with nothing in it. As you're asking questions and finding out all this information, you're putting all of this stuff inside of this package. All of this stuff. So at the end of the conversation, you wrap the package, you put a little bow on there, and you hand it to them. And they have this custom tailored, specific, wish list present of a call to action for you. And I'll give 2 examples of this. this is really where my mind switched and I started doing this, when I moved off of just giving everyone Challenge 22. As much as I'd want everyone to try Challenge 22 and go vegan today, I'm also a realist, and I understand that there's only so much I can do, and everyone is in a different stage in life. I'm always going to promote veganism as the end goal and the only way to live a lifestyle that's not going to cause unnecessary harm, or the least amount of unnecessary harm as humanly possible to animals, but I am mindful that everyone is at a different state in life. I was having this conversation in Seattle with this 13 or 14-year-old boy. Really powerful conversation. This kid had so much love in his heart. He said his mom was allowing him to watch, but she wasn't around. He was against everything he was seeing. He totally thinks it's animal cruelty, loves his dog, loves his cat, wants to be vegan, says, I want to be vegan, but. And I was like, what's your but? He goes, my mom won't let me. I live at home. She hates vegans. She talks about hating vegans a lot. She buys all the food and says she'll ground me if I try to go vegan. Probably all scare tactics, but I couldn't even begin to put myself in his shoes. I felt for him. And then something, in my head was like, if I were to give him this card at the end and say, here, try Challenge 22, his mom probably...
Challenge 22, yes.
Oh, yeah, I just explained it a second ago. A free online 22-day vegan challenge on Facebook. So I could have given him this card, and he probably would have been like a little bit excited, but would have gone home and maybe had a lot of fear because his mom probably monitors his Facebook. That probably wouldn't have been the most efficient or effective call to action for him. That wouldn't have been this custom wrapped package to give to him on Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa, whatever holiday you celebrate. But I gave him something different. And that's when this aha moment hit. I was like, this kid needs something special. If I want to do everything that I can as an activist and do the most amount of justice for the animals, what I can do is give him everything he needs to be motivated and inspired. So what I told him, I was like, first, hey, thank you for being so compassionate and loving and respectful for these animals. It seems like you have it in your heart. And he was like nodding his head. He was very happy that I was on his side. And I said, it must be really tough to be in your position. I have some homework for you. I like saying I have some homework. It works for kids. It works for adults. Try it. Off topic. But I said, I have some homework for you. And I started to give him this custom wrapped package of a call to action, his what's next. I said, I want you to go home, and when your mom's not looking, I want you to become a professional on what it means to be a vegan. I gave him a few YouTubers to watch. I said, go to Google, make Google your best friend. What is a vegan? What does it mean to be a vegan? Veganism, healthy vegan. I told him to go become a professional because your heart already says you're vegan. Now it's time to just fill your mind with all the information. I said, that's step one. Step two, ask your mom if she would watch Okja with you. Does anyone not know what Okja is? Okja is a half CGI, half non-CGI movie on Netflix. Really, really amazing, and I think it's more kid-friendly of a movie to watch. So I was like, ask your mom if she'll watch Okja with you. A lot of family members that I get feedback with will at least watch Okja. If your mother watches Okja, your last step is to ask her to watch What the Health. I gave him this 3-step solution for him because I can't follow him home. I'm not the vegan police. And I wanted to give him everything so that I would set him up for success, or what I thought would be successful for him. This kid took this card that I had written all this stuff down for him, this like little step-by-step process, the biggest smile on his face, and he like walked away like, thank you, like I'm so excited, I'm gonna go know everything about veganism, because this kid in a couple years is gonna go to college. This kid in a couple years, his mom might change her mindset. And so if we're setting him up, if we're priming him up to be ready to be a professional, then that's gonna be long-term success, I think. Instead of just giving him a card with Challenge 22, and he goes home and looks at this card and is like, my mom blocked my Facebook, like, that might not have been the best thing that I could have done for him. Another example with an adult, another one in Seattle, one of my favorite conversations. It was really powerful with this man. I always try to bring everything to the ethics. We were having a great conversation, but he kept on talking about health, like annoyingly talking about health. My family this, my family that. I was listening, I was absorbing all this information, but it got to be like, yeah, but what do you think about this? He's like, yeah, it's animal cruelty, but cancer and diabetes and this and that. So I listened and I gave him space, and I started to talk about the health thing. The call to action, my old me would have given him Challenge 22. He probably would have put that card in his back pocket and would have went home and be like, I'm not into Challenge 22 because it's not for my needs right now. Yes, it is in the long run, but it wasn't for him. So what I did is that switch flipped in my head, and at the end I was like, hey, I always like to reemphasize and talk about the ethics. I was like, it's amazing that you're against this and that you think this is animal cruelty. It means you're vegan at heart. You just haven't aligned your actions with your beliefs, not because you're a bad person, just because we've been conditioned this way. He goes, yeah, you're totally right. I am against this. And I said, but it seems like you're really interested in the health aspect. He goes, yeah, like as it was something special that I had uncovered, even though he was like lecturing me about health for the last 10 minutes, but he felt understood. He felt like I was listening to him. So I was like, yeah, it seems like you're really interested in the health thing, health side of veganism. I got some homework for you. Pulled out this card. I said, there's a book that I read that helped me go vegan. It's called The China Study. And I circled it on the card and I gave it to him. I said, you should read this. And he goes, looks at the card for a second. He asked me, okay, what's it about? I told him a little bit more about what it's about. And he's like, amazing. Pulls out his phone, opens up Amazon Prime, orders the book on his phone and goes, look, presses purchase. Which means in America, it's going to get to his doorstep in 2 days. Not saying that anytime you do this, you're going to get someone to order books on their phone, but this just showed that when you cater to someone's needs, when you listen to them, their wants, their desires, and you give them a call to action on how you think they're going to best be able to absorb veganism, that's going to be amazing. That's going to be success. I also did mention Challenge 22. I like to follow up with the next step after his homework. And I was just like, hey, also, when you're ready, when you finish the China Study, if you need help, there's a free resource on here. It's called Challenge 22. 22 days of free help for being vegan. And I circled that for him. And he's like, thank you. I'll look into that as well. But he ordered the book. And that book got to his house. And I bet you he at least read some of it. Because I always at least read some book when I order it. Whether or not I finish it, that's another story. But this just shows that we do need to be mindful of everyone and their needs and where they are in life. This kid who's 13, lives at home, and his mom hates vegans, giving him Challenge 22, probably not the best. Gave him something that was manageable for him. Gave this guy something that he was obviously passionate about. He's going to read those chapters in the China Study. If you haven't read it, great book. It's a little outdated now. How Not to Die is like the updated one. But he's going to read that book, and so much of that's going to resonate with him. When he was telling me stuff, I was like, ooh, I remember that chapter. Like, stuff's going to really sink in, and that might be the connection he needs to make to go vegan. So remember, any conversation that you have, not a plane driver, not a pilot, bus, plane, train, out on the streets, someone asks you about your water bottle, your shirt, family member, coworker, always focus on giving some form of call to action. Even if it's a little, hey, here's this card, watch this movie, it seems like you're really interested in it. That's another thing. I recommend everyone make their own business cards. Super cheap. You could buy some for like 15 bucks for one color, one side, 250 cards, and put your favorite documentaries on there. Put the information you think that you want. And another thing that I did in regards to the number 5, the inspiration, is I want to be there to make things easy for people. So at the end of my conversations, I'll even be like, how can I make this easier for you? Those powerful words speaks volumes to them because they feel like they have someone on their side. They have a team player. I'm not just saying you're wrong, I'm right. I'm saying, hey, I'm here to help. So I created a Gmail. I had a business card at the time. I gave people my Facebook. Don't have any stalkers yet, but you can block them or unfriend them if they do. But be of help to them or for them, because that's just going to take your activism to the next level, and that's going to be super efficient and effective when it comes to helping someone get from point A to point B and then start taking veganism seriously. Now, you don't have to create a Gmail or give your Facebook, but at least offer to give them more resources. I created a free 7-day meal plan of simple recipes. It took me 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and then linked the recipes on this Excel spreadsheet, and now I have that as a PDF, and I'm like, hey, if you don't know what to eat, and you think it's expensive, let me send you this thing. Let me make something easy for you. And people will send me an email and I'll just send it to them. Or they'll write me on Facebook. Whatever I can do to make things easier for people, that's what I'm going to do in my call to action, in my inspiration. And then, yeah, I think that's it for the inspiration part. Just really focus on trying to uncover what it is someone needs and try to give them that specific tailored call to action. So just to sum up those 5 strategies that I use, it's ask good questions, well planned out, open-ended, get them to talk, get them to give you information. Listen to that information, store it in your head, and use it later on. Understand where they're coming from, feel, felt, found, woo, love that. And then educate them, educate yourself. Fill in the blanks, give them education, give them information when you think they need it most, and then inspire. Give them that call to action, the what's next. Make someone leave your conversation like that kid, just like, yee, like I know what I have to do now, or buying a book, empowered enough to buy a book. He had so much trust in me that I was giving him valuable information, which I was, and which we all are. You know, we have truth on our side. We're giving everyone the right information, the honest information, the respectful information. It's whether or not they take it. That's the important part. So focus on that. Ask, listen, understand, educate, and inspire. And before I get into a few more things, water break? You can cut that out of there, camera. Thank you. Or keep it in for comedic relief, whatever you want. And so last, I want to touch upon a few things that gets brought up a lot. First one is, when should we and if we should bring up the V word? V word, I mean veganism. I know vegetarian's a V word as well, but should we be bringing up veganism, saying the word vegan in our outreach conversations? And if so, when should we? Because a lot of people have given me feedback saying, I brought up the word vegan and they just turned around and walked away. And it scared them. I think we need to be bringing up the V word and saying vegan or veganism in every conversation because, one, I think we need to be normalizing veganism in the world, but we also need to be normalizing the word vegan in our outreach and not being afraid to have someone be afraid of our word, but of the word. Because the V word, veganism, is the only word the animals have. They don't have vegetarian, they don't have plant-based, they don't have meatless Monday, they don't have reducing, they have vegan. And that's it. So I do think we need to be saying this word. However, I think there is a wrong time to use it. And that's right in the beginning of the conversation. If you're walking up and someone's like, yeah, what's going on here? Yeah, we're a vegan organization. And I've heard this before. And we're showing this stuff where it's about veganism. That's probably going to scare someone away. And I've seen it happen. In the beginning of my conversation, I used the word a little bit too early, and people did put up their wall. They might not have left, but I saw their guard go up. And we could see people get defensive, because the second we say vegan, the second someone reads vegan in our Instagram bio, they're like defensive, because it's saying like, oh, their moral compass is like more ethical than my moral compass. You know, it's like their morals are questioned when they just read the word vegan. That's not the case. So the right time to use it. I use these two questions, 2.5 statements, in every conversation that I have when I don't know someone, talking to them about veganism, because I think there is a right time to use it. And like I said, I think we need to be saying these words. We need to be normalizing this word, and we need to be summing it up so people can make that final connection that we are talking about veganism. Because probably for the first 5 minutes of my outreach conversations, I never drop the word. They don't really know I'm vegan yet. They don't really know what's happening. I try to keep it objective. How does this make you feel? Have you seen this footage before? What does animal cruelty look like to you? Are you familiar with what happens in this industry? And then there gets to a point when I'm ready to bring it up, when I want people to make that connection. And so it usually comes right after I ask the question, do you eat animals? Then I'll ask these two things in a row, 2.5. Are you familiar with veganism? What this does is it now makes you super non-judgmental, almost like ignorantly non-judgmental, because most of the time they go, duh, like I know what veganism is. But what this is doing is it's not assuming. We never want to assume. In business, what I learned in business is never assume. It only makes an ass out of you and me. So never assume. So what this does, it might sound simple and stupid, but it works wonders. It's usually a quick answer. They go, yes. I've had like 2 people say no, and that's because they were from countries I couldn't pronounce. But they didn't know what veganism was. So, are you familiar with what veganism is? Most of the time, they just quickly go, yes. But now you've established yourself as someone who's not judging. You're not assuming. I follow it right up with, and what are your thoughts on veganism? Before they have a chance to speak, I go, if it's a good conversation, I'll touch their shoulder, I'll put my hand on my heart, and be like, and I like honesty, with a smile. And they usually laugh a little, because they're like, oh, you wanted honesty. So are you familiar with what veganism is? And what are your thoughts on veganism? I like honesty. And what comes next is amazing, because they're either going to take this side and be like, oh, I freaking hate vegans. I had this vegan roommate in college, and she was only eating lettuce, and they're militant and extreme, and this, that. Like, they're going to give you that information, or they're going to give you, yeah, like, I totally get it. I understand veganism. One of my family members is vegan. I can never go vegan because this is beautiful. Both answers are great, because if they give you this first answer and they give you that aggression and you know something's up. Now you know how to approach the conversation. Now you know some of your next questions to ask. Did something happen with you and a vegan? Sometimes I'll say with jokingly, and then it'll bring down the wall a little, and they'll tell me a little bit more. Or I could say, well, what challenges were you having with veganism that turned you off so much? And if they answer this side, when they say yeah, I totally get it, it's amazing that you understand and respect veganism. Why aren't you vegan yourself? Or what's holding you back from being vegan? Or tell me a little bit more about your cousin that's vegan, if they said that. So what this did by saying, are you familiar with veganism? And what are your thoughts on veganism? It brought up the word, normalizes it without coming from a place of judgment. No one feels attacked. No one feels like, I haven't even said I'm vegan. I just brought up the word, normalizes it, kind of brings everything into a bigger context. Okay, I get it. Slaughterhouse footage, standing here, maybe a vegan t-shirt, maybe a vegan hat, tattoos. They kind of make that connection. All right, I get what's going on here. And it's, once again, this bubble is a little bit more safer. There's a lot more respect because I'm being honest with them and I want honesty from them. Some people will just rip it into me and tell me their whole life story with veganism. Some people will say, yeah, I was vegan in college. Great answer. Why'd you stop? And then you can ask all these questions. So this really sets you up for I call it the closer, how you finish out your conversation. What information they give you here is so important. And it normalizes the word. I can't say that enough. It keeps bringing up that word, keeps showing people that we're not afraid to talk about it. That we're not afraid to say, a lot of people say, but can I just use plant-based? And I go, no. Because plant-based, I was plant-based and I was still wearing wool and betting on horses and this and that. Veganism, 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 veganism. V word, let's use it. So, that was aggressive pointing at you. So yeah, I use this all the time, and this is another thing that after this workshop, I hear a lot of people using it at the Cubes of Truth or when we do outreach, and they tell me that they have a lot of fun with this one, especially when they say, and I like honesty, because people tend to laugh, and they're like, oh, I've had people say, all right, I'm going to be brutally honest, and what they give me is not, I expected that to come from them, but they think they're being super honest. But what that did is I gave them complete space, free space, unadulterated space, non-judgmental space for them to tell me what they feel about the most controversial word in the world, I feel like. And now they've given me all this information, and then I I then approach the rest of the conversation with asking questions. So bring those questions up. That's a really nice way to bring it up. Sometimes I don't use that. If someone's like, yeah, I'm against this, and right in the beginning, I go against what I said without using it in the beginning. If someone's like, yeah, this is awful, I hate this, I go, wow, so you're vegan? And I bring that up right away, and they go, no. And then I'm like, oh, really? Why not? Do you know much about A, B, and C? And then that's how the conversation goes. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution for this. I would say 98% of the time I use are you familiar with what veganism is? And what are your thoughts on veganism? I like honesty. And then a couple more things, fear and failure. Fear is a big thing for a lot of new activists, for a lot of activists who are still in the game right now. We fear the objections people are going to give us because I think we fear not being able to answer those and not being able to do justice for the animals. In the beginning of my outreach, I was really afraid. I think it's natural and okay to be afraid. It's what we do with that fear that's important. We got to channel that fear, and we got to say, hey, I'm on the right side of history. I got truth on my side. I'm fighting for the animals, so I need to overcome that fear by practicing. It's as simple as that. My fear went away. Doing outreach right now, I could do it with a blindfold on and just walk up to someone and have a conversation and not know anything and have a great conversation because I've done it so many times. The fear completely dissipated. I had fear in every single form of activism that I did up until 2 months ago when I went into a factory farm, when I went into a slaughterhouse. When I leafleted for the first time, I was afraid. I was like, what are people going to think of me? Take this flyer, take this flyer. I was afraid. So I think it's okay to be afraid. It's what we do with that fear. So listen to that fear and use that fear as fuel to light that fire within, to go out and do some positive activism for the animals. And then failure. Many people come up to me or will message me online saying, I'm feeling really down because I feel like I let the animals down. I feel like I failed them. And I go, why? And they're like, I had an outreach conversation and I just didn't give the right answers. I got afraid. I backed out. I ended the conversation. I just didn't know what to do, so they feel like they failed. Let me tell you, this is what I believe. If you are out there fighting for animal liberation on behalf of the animals, I don't think you can fail. I think it is just growth. I think anytime you think you're failing, if you're out there fighting for that end goal, you're just learning. You're just growing. My first conversation was like, have you seen this footage before? Like, are you sure you don't, like I was stuttering, like it was crazy. And that wasn't failing. I thought it was failure. But when you think that's failure, that's not going to do some good stuff for your headspace. That's going to put you in a negative place, and that's going to carry on into your next outreach conversations. Instead, be like, you know what? What could I do differently? Did I not know something? How can I know that? That's what comes in with the education. We have so many tools at our dispense. That's the right?
Disposal.
Yeah, disposal. You could dispense of something, disposal. We have a lot of tools at our disposal, and we need to be using that. In an outreach conversation, if you feel like you're failing, it is okay to say, I don't know that. Someone says something to me about the environment and about how many acres are used to do A, B, and C. I go, hey, I don't focus a lot of my time on the environmental aspect. I focus my time and energy on the ethical side of veganism. I don't know that. I do know that a massive amount of A, B, and C is used for A, B, and C. But I can get that information for you if you'd like. I know someone over here that has that information. Let me whip out Google. This happened the other day in Sydney. Someone asked a friend who was doing outreach if the gas chambers were RSPCA approved, which is their welfare standards in Australia, and he didn't know, so he thought I knew. So he was like, hey Josh, can you come over here for a second? And I was like, all right. And he's like, asked me the question. I was like, I don't know, but can I get out my phone? And the bystander was like, yeah, I'd love to know. Whipped out my phone, found the answer, gave him the answer. We had a great conversation. People think we're more real. We're actual normal human beings and not these entitled vegans if we just say that we don't know something. But it's what you do next that's important. So research, educate, use the tools that are at our disposal, and educate yourself on the information so you can fill your mind with all of that info so you can better handle that next time, so that you just remind yourself that you're not failing, you're constantly growing, because it's going to get easier. 30 cubes of truth in, I was like, I'm getting the hang of this. 50 cubes of truth, I was like, this is nothing. 70 cubes of truth, I was like, all right, I'm getting a little tired, but this is still easy. So it just takes time, as with anything. When you start a new job, it's not easy. I was the worst salesman ever when I started my job, FYI. Like, it was awful, but it just got better, and it got easier and easier. And that's with everything that we do. Taking photos, taking videos, writing music, writing blog posts. So practice, 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 and try to remind yourself that it's not failure. It's just growing. And then lastly, I want to talk about ending a conversation. One thing a lot of people ask me as well is, when do I end a conversation, and is it okay? Yes, it's okay. I think we actually do need to end conversations. One, if it's not adding value to your life, and two, if it's not adding value to the environment or the demonstration. For example, if you're at a family dinner and it's a toxic environment, there's a lot of yelling, spit's coming out, food might be being thrown, that's probably not adding value to this environment or yourself, so it's okay to end that. If you're at a Cube of Truth and you're talking with someone for 45 minutes about religion, and this person's now starting to yell and draw attraction in, and they won't listen to anything that you're saying, it's probably time to end that conversation. Because we got to go after the low-hanging fruit, the people that are out there that are willing and open to make that change, and they're always out there. If you come to the Cube of Truth on Sunday, you'll see there are so many people out there ready to make this change. In the beginning, I had conversations that went for 40 minutes, 50 minutes, 60 minutes, because I felt that if I ended this conversation, I wasn't doing the animals justice. I would exhaust so much of my energy and my resources fighting with these people. And if you have to use the word fighting, you know that that conversation is probably not going anywhere. Now, I'm not saying just a minute into your conversation, be like, this one's a little bit too tough, bye. Try. Work on how to ask the right questions and to combat those objections. But if you're 30 minutes in, 40 minutes in, and your gut's telling you that this is not beneficial or adding value to the demo, end it. And what I do is I'll let them talk for a little and say, hey, I really appreciate your time. It seems like we're not seeing eye to eye right now. I really want to make sure to take care of this demonstration. I hope that one day you're able to see this as the cruelty that it is. Hope you have a great day. Or, hey, I really appreciate your time, but we're not really getting anywhere on this. A lot that you're saying is really irrelevant to what I'm trying to talk about. Hope you have a nice day. Or just turn around and say, hope you have a nice day, and walk away. If you know that's the worst thing that's going to happen, I'm not saying everyone should turn around and walk away from their convos, but just be mindful that you have the power and you should have the duty to end a conversation if it's not strengthening your own advocacy and not actually doing work for the animals. Because when you're at a cube, there's going to be hundreds of people around, or I don't know how the foot traffic is here, but a lot of people around ready and willing to make that change. So I really like to always say I appreciate your time. because even if it's a negative conversation, I learned something from that. I picked something out, and I want them to leave with like this thing in their mind, why does this person appreciate my time, weirdo? Like, I'm yelling at them, I'm trying to be right, and just say, hey, I really appreciate the time. I hope one day you're able to find the love in your heart to extend that to all beings. Have a great day. I use that one a lot, because then it sets them out with something just that I'm really trying to get in on their heart. And ending a good conversation, so that it's not super negative to end this out, is always, I appreciate your time. Always repeating back some of the stuff that they told me, really trying to understand them a little bit more, tell them how much I respect them for taking this time. You'll know when you need to say the right things at the end. Give them this custom wrapped package of a call to action. And then you know at the beginning I like hugs, so I end most of my really good conversations with hugs. I highly recommend you try it. I have a lot of people trying it at demos after the cubes. It's not something that you have to do. I'm just saying that it's really amazing for me, because what it does is it puts a smile on my face, it puts a smile on their face, and they walk away being like, I just watched slaughterhouse footage, I spoke with a vegan activist, and they gave me a hug, and now I have a smile on my face. Like, that's really like painting a really good picture of what vegan activists actually are, who vegan activists actually are. And you'll know it. Don't go hugging all the negative conversations. That doesn't work. I've tried it once, didn't work. But usually your gut will be like, this person's amazing. When I always have so much love in my heart when I know I need to hug someone at the end of a conversation, and it happens more often than not. And I'll just be like, hey, appreciate the time. Here's your call to action. And what was your name again? And they'll tell me their name. Like, my name's Joshua. I'm a hugger. And I'll open my arms. You can see it on my YouTube videos. I say that exact thing. And they'll be like, oh, cool. And they give me a hug, and they're like smiling in the camera. And it's just really nice. But like I said, you don't have to do it. I know in Norway and in Sweden, the people probably aren't going to be as receptive as that, but my goal is to break down those social barriers. But I love ending my conversations with that, because then it sets me up for my next conversation. My headspace is already primed. I'm walking away like that little kid, like, yeah, like, had a great conversation, and I have a lot of love in my heart. Who's next? And that sets me up for the next conversation. So try that if you'd like. I'd love to see some hugs this Sunday. And I think that's it. Just to sort of recap, focus on doing anything that we can to be a voice for the animals, utilizing all forms of activism, and sort of dipping your pen in all the different inks, if that's an okay analogy, trying all different forms of activism, focusing on asking good questions, listening to those answers, understanding where they're coming from, educating them and inspiring them, and educating yourself. And then also work on your headspace and practice. Practice, practice, practice. I really hope that you were able to take some value out of today. This is just a really simple way that I sort of handle every single conversation that I have. I see me doing all this stuff in non-vegan outreach as well. When I'm at like the grocery store buying stuff, I'm like asking them questions. I'm like, really, like, I think I might have a hidden vegan agenda in there as well. That's probably what comes out. But yeah, I hope you're able to find some value in this conversation. We have the Cube of Truth on Sunday. What time? 5 o'clock p.m. We will be doing the Cube of Truth, so it'd be amazing for all of you to come out. If you've never done the Cube before, how many of you have never done a Cube? Cool. So if any of you are coming, just wear as close to all black as possible. We don't need to bring screens, because you have... Okay, so you don't need to bring screens. All you got to do is literally come wearing as close to all black as possible and ready to do some work for the animals. If you're not comfortable with jumping on outreach, that's something I forgot to say. Don't ever feel pressured like you have to do outreach. Build that confidence so that when you get out there, you're not pushing yourself to where you get so afraid of doing something and you have a bad experience to where you don't want to do it again. Take your time. Shadow other activists. Come out to the Cube, stand in the Cube, hold a screen, a sign, and be the reason why we're able to have outreach. And then when you're taking a break, come shadow us. Come listen to our conversations. You know, don't stand like right next to the person, but shadow the conversations, listen to everything, build your own confidence, watch videos on YouTube of outreach, write down your own scripts, focus on building up that strength and that courage to do it, because we all know what it's like for those of you in here that have had that good conversation, that have made that connection with someone, so that at the end of that convo, they might have been in tears saying, thank you so much. And then they point to the people in the Cube and say, thank you for being here. That's powerful, and that's my goal, is to help everyone experience more of those conversations. I would say 95% of my conversation, 98 go really well. Not all of them end vegan, but they go really, really well. And I think if we use these practices that I talked about tonight, you'll just set yourself up for greater success, and you'll just have more confidence in yourself to work on some things. So yeah, thank you for this chat.